Tale. I'm Emily.
I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Is that how you say it? Maas?
I think so.
Okay.
Maas,
By Sarah J.
Maas.
Maas. I mean, this is America. We could say it long, hard A's if we want.
We damage everything else we say, so
I know.
why not?
It's English. It's hard because we are only learning these things from reading. At least
Yeah.
I am. I'm only reading them. I'm not looking them up to see how they're pronounced. So Sarah J. Maas. This was a really cool book. I liked it a lot. It was kind of we had been discussing earlier that this is actually kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling.
Mm-hmm.
It is not particularly modernized, I think. I think it's pretty traditional to a typical Beauty and the Beast style story.
Depends
in a lot of ways.
On how you define modernized.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an urban fantasy, that's for sure.
Oh no.
I kind of half
it's
expected
not taking place
it.
in 20th century New York.
Yeah, like I kind of went into this blind. I hadn't done a lot of research. I'd heard that this was a good book and that people were really enjoying it, but people were also writing it off as fairy porn, so I was like, not exactly sure I wanted to get involved in that. But we had done this as a buddy read with our friend from Bound and Tagged, Samantha, and
she's actually the whole reason
she was the whole reason we had tried this.
It's one of her very favorite books.
Yeah, and so I was a little concerned I wouldn't like it.
I was too.
Yeah, because she had even told you she thought you weren't going to like it.
She came back and thought I was not going to like it. So.
Yeah, so we were like, what are we getting ourselves into? I thought I wouldn't like it because I thought it was... I just don't find romances very appealing. I mean, I like the Beauty and the Beast story, but again, it's just another romance kind of thing. So, and I had read the traditional Beauty and the Beast, actually both traditional ones.
Okay.
The earlier one, which had like the woman of the
Villeneuve one from 1700s.
Yeah, and because I had read it for a children's literature class, and then we had read the kind of the Hans Christian Andersen version.
Okay.
That was out there. That's kind of the more traditional style that people are familiar with.
The Disney Beauty.
Yeah, the kind of Disney-esque, where Disney loosely based their movie off of, and I mean loosely, very, very loosely. But so I kind of went into this thinking, okay, it's a romance. I may not enjoy it, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I was very surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the synopsis is this girl is very poor. Her father made some bad investment decisions, and they went from being very wealthy to very poor.
Yeah.
And she's kind of been like hunting and gathering for their family because they don't have a lot of money. So she's been going out like hunting animals, selling the pelts, and then using the meat and stuff to feed her family. And she happens to kill a wolf. Not sure if it's a fairy shape-shifting, but they live pretty close to the edge of where the fairy world starts and their world ends. And of course there's been ongoing hundreds of years conflict, and of course the humans don't like the fairies. The fairies, there's some that are fine, some are not, but for the most part, everybody just hates everybody else.
Yeah.
As far as they know. And so she kills this wolf, she sells the pelt in town, she gets some money, and then when she's in her home in that evening after selling the pelt, this other wolf being comes in who happens to be a high fairy in wolf form, says, you just killed one of my servants, so your choice is either die or come live with me to like basically make up for having killed one of my servants.
Yeah. Or
one of my kind. And so she's kind of bound. She thinks she's bound by the treaty that the humans and fairies have, and she goes and lives with him, and things start happening. They start falling in love, even though she started off really hating them. She kind of realized they're not much different than people. And then as they're about to fall in love, she gets sent home. And then when she's home, she's like, something very wrong is about to happen. She just gets a gut feeling. So then she goes back only to find that the whole place is ransacked. And, she has to go save the prince. Prince Charming, so to speak. And I really don't want to say more because there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of interesting details. There's a lot more action in this. I feel like the romance was balanced well with action and like some witty, sassy commentary and just like world building and kind of the social hierarchy building as she was trying to figure out what was going on and all this stuff. And this high fairy named Tamlin, he's like taking care of her family while she's away, because like that's her biggest concern was like, if I'm gone, my family's gonna starve to death. And he's like, nah, it'll be fine. He just basically makes them wealthy as hell. Yeah, he basically just sends them money and makes them wealthy as hell, and just makes this like perfect set of circumstances that's too good to be true.
Wish I had a daughter to send off to the fairies.
I know, right? Let's get us some wealth here. Anyway. So it ended up being like a really cool combination of action, drama, and romance for me, and I felt like the romance wasn't as heavy as I thought it would be.
No.
And it's not very, and it wasn't like I was kind of like, why did they write this off as fairy porn? Like the first book has like what, 2 sex scenes in it,
and they weren't what I would call porn.
Yeah, they were very tastefully done. I felt like they were realistic for the circumstances. No worse than
what you would come across on television.
Yeah, seriously. So I really enjoyed this book. This was a 5-star for me because it was fast-paced, and the ending, without spoiling it, gave me enough closure that I didn't feel like I had to move on to the next book in the series right away, because it left me on a cliffhanger. It still gave me enough where it's like, I do want to pursue the story further, but I'm not sitting there frustrated waiting for the next time waiting for a book to be mailed to me because I want to read this next one in the series to figure out what happens with the rest of the story. Mm-hmm. It gave me enough closure with enough details to figure out, now how is that going to work in the next book? Yeah. So I really enjoyed it a lot for those reasons, and I felt like it was just a really fun fantasy read. Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it.
It's mindless escapism.
Yeah.
And it's very well done at that. It's not even crappy mindless escapism. It's nicely written, nicely done.
Yeah, there's some twists in it that were very thoughtful, I felt.
So I ended up enjoying it. I had seen some YouTube videos about it, and that's where everybody on YouTube is calling this fairy porn and saying it's fairies with big dicks all through it, and there just wasn't any of that.
No,
at least not in this
not in the first book. We haven't read the rest of the series yet to find out if it continues that way. But
it gets that way, but no, the reviewers are off on this. It's not as pornographic as other people are painting it. At least the first book.
And honestly, a lot of that dynamic, I can see in the rest of the series that becoming more interesting, because there's some alliances made with some strings attached without giving too much away, that I thought was going to be tricky but good in the next series. So maybe it does become a little bit more racy, but honestly, like, this doesn't feel like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of book.
No, it isn't. It's not at all an erotic novel.
No.
Like other people are painting it to be.
No. And I felt like it was very realistic. Like, if I was in, Tamlin's situation, I would have reacted a lot of the same ways that he did. Like, I would have been like, yeah, this is too dangerous for you, send you back. Or, like, a lot of all of that, a lot of all of the drama felt very realistic and not super overdone or pushed. I felt like it was, I don't know, it just felt like a very, like, oh, I have enough empathy to realize, yeah, I probably would react the same way. It felt relatable, despite, like, how fantasy-esque it is.
Yeah.
But the world building was really pretty, and I hope to meet
it was good.
a lot.
Some really cool monsters in it.
I love the monsters. Or, like, other dark fairies, or, like, the sinister fairies that you hear about. I felt like fairy lore was actually really well researched for this. It felt very, like, Celtic fairy lore in a lot of respects, which I'm super into, because I love that kind of crap. So, like, traditional fairy folktale and stuff like that, a lot of things were integrated in that, but there was a lot of original, like, fairy lore stuff, too, that I thought was really good.
Right.
So I felt like I kind of got the things I liked and knew and loved from, like, traditional stuff, but then it also kind of melded very well into its own storyline, and how does that play out, and all these different, types of fairies that are being developed in the story that have different abilities and all that stuff. It was really interesting. I really liked it a lot.
Now, for my take on it, I only gave it 4 stars, but only
solid 4 stars.
Only because in thinking about that, I'm thinking about our whole Top Tales library. How does this sit? I did, in the end, decide to add it to our Top Tales list.
Mhm.
But in considering whether it really sits well among Shakespeare and To Kill a Mockingbird and Dune and the Foundation trilogy and
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings, no, not really,
Yeah.
because there's what I miss from it, and before I read this, I went and read the original Villeneuve novel, The Beauty and the Beast, in translation. And what I loved about that book, I talked about in another video, but what I loved about it was it did have kind of a moral, a point.
Mhm.
It was trying to tell you something
Mhm.
through the story about not to judge people just on their surfaces, which I think is a really important point to make,
Mhm.
especially these days.
Yeah.
Um, this drew upon that story a lot more than Disney or even La Belle et la Bête by
Mhm.
Cocteau. Um, those stories miss out on all the back politics that is
Mhm.
in the original Villeneuve Beauty and the Beast.
Yep.
This one brings kind of that whole political situation back into it, and there's a lot of machinations going on,
Mhm.
which makes it more engaging as an adventure story, but it doesn't have that lesson about not judging. That's
No,
just
it
totally
really
absent.
doesn't.
It really, I maybe somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not getting any kind of. Um, I forget if it was Harlan Ellison or David Gerald that wrote an article way back in the late 1970s talking about um, how to write fiction,
Mhm.
and they said it's like Cracker Jack.
Yeah.
You got to have the caramel corn, but you also got to have that toy surprise, that extra thing that you leave
Mhm.
with from the end.
Yeah.
You know, that lesson, like taking from H.G. Wells' Island of Dr. Moreau, how we do all have that dark side, or
Mhm.
um, taking from Frankenstein, how we all have those dual
Mhm.
sides to our psyche. This lacks that
Mhm.
depth that you
Yes.
have with such greater literature.
And I think too, one of the things that a lot of people point out as a flaw in like the Beauty and the Beast story, as we know it probably from Disney, is that people don't change that fast. And even this timeline, it's probably what 6 to 8 months that she was in basically the
Something like
fairy
that.
realm to change her mind from hating and being completely terrified of fairies, murdering one, and then having to be forced to live with one and be like, oh, they're just like people.
And then just jumping in bed with them.
Yeah, and then just jumping in bed with them. Like, I do see that being a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But in order to keep the novel fast paced,
Yeah.
you kind of have to have that. But the truth is, people don't change. People don't change that quickly or easily.
Not
People
really.
don't. It takes a lot to change people's minds, and
Takes a
so
long
I
time.
did find that to be a little bit of a stretch. But it was necessary to perpetuate the storyline as quickly as they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Because these chapters were not very long. Like breezing through this was not
a fast book.
Yeah, if I had not had a whole bunch of crap happening, I would have read this probably in 2 days.
Yeah.
But I had a lot going on at the time, so I ended up lagging behind both you and Samantha when we were reading this. I was like, oh no. But it is a really fast-paced and really great book. And in order, I think the moral might come up more frequently as the series goes on.
I don't know.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's a lot of foreshadowing on somehow some fairies are for the humans and some are against them.
Mm-hmm.
And how that's going to play out is a whole other area where that could be brought back in.
Yeah, there's a lot of foreshadowing of some kind of big war coming.
Of course. There's always a big war. There should be, at least. Because clearly there's some conflicts that need to be resolved just amongst the fairies alone, much less between fairy and humans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of room for that to continue to be a theme in this story. I don't think it's going to be the only theme in this story.
Yeah.
But yes, this particular book did not do a huge thing for that moral of the story. Because love is a pretty powerful emotion.
Yeah.
It can change a lot of people, but not that fast or that quickly.
No.
So I feel like now that the love part has been figured out, quote unquote. We'll see what the rest of the series brings out. I'm interested to see kind of the direction that goes. So
yeah, we've already got a copy of the Court of Mist and Fury, and are planning on buddy reading that with Samantha. So
yeah,
that'll be in the future, and we'll see how it goes. But as far as this first book goes, we recommend it, and the people we recommend it for are people who want a light fantasy adventure read with a little bit of spicy romance in there.
Yep.
If you're looking for Lord of the Rings, look somewhere else.
Yeah, this is not a Lord of the Rings-esque sort of thing.
If you're looking for a Midsummer Night's Dream, look somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you're looking for Dune, look somewhere else. If you're just looking for a fun, fast fantasy adventure with some cool creatures and an interesting story,
I feel like if you like the author Holly Black.
Okay.
She does more urban fantasy kind of stuff, but if you like Holly Black, you'll probably like this.
Okay.
And that's all I'm gonna say. I mean, it's still pretty different, but style-wise, fast-paced-wise, tone-wise, it's very similar.
Yeah.
And I think if you like her stuff, you'd like this stuff. So that's all I got.
So I don't know if this is controversial, but yeah, we're moving this into the top tales simply because if you want to nitpick, you can find a lot of nits to pick, but so can you find a lot of nits in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's a lot you can pick on that.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about the first New Hope movie. There's a lot of things.
I was actually feeling that way a little bit.
It's also probably the most incredible science fiction movie ever made.
Yeah. I kind of was feeling the same way about Willow. If you like Willow, you'll probably like this. It's got the same kind of spicy. If you like the movie Willow, you'll probably enjoy this fantasy book.
Okay.
But I feel like the dialogue's better than Willow. Also, not strong in dialogue.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got for this one. How about you, Greg?
That's all I got.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Like, subscribe, read it. It's fun. And we'll see you next time.